Okay, thanks. So as I said in the email that I sent out to all of you, and this is only going to Michigan Co-op people, this, when we were listening to VLAX, one of the conversations we had recently in a webinar, it became very clear that there's an increased focus on relationship building. And we thought it would be good for us to have those conversations because we know that a lot of you are doing very creative things to engage kids. And, especially in a virtual environment, which can be a little bit trickier. When I was teaching online, I found it trickier in some ways, but absolutely better in others because it was more one-on-one. But, how do you actually make that connection? So those are the things we want to be really talking about. And since Cindy and I kind of have this conversation about doing these, it's just like constantly coming across my radar, the emphasis that is being put on social emotional learning, building the relationships, the value, like our webinar yesterday, of happiness and purpose. And all of these things, I think, are ideas that, many of us have thought about for a long, long time. But the fact that there's more emphasis right now, perhaps due to the personalization that we're all beginning to, kind of focus on a little bit more. I think we really do need to get our voices heard in this and really spread the word, I guess is a better way to put it. So that's kind of what the intent of these are, to share ideas, bring up your questions, bring up your concerns, your challenges, whatever it is. Feel free to have this conversation with us, and then we can see where this goes. This is, Cindy and I are very hopeful that this will be an ongoing conversation, and so we'll ensure that we provide those opportunities. So I guess, it's hard to kind of say who wants to go first here, but does anyone want to jump in about anything they learned from Mike Haynes' webinar yesterday or any other topic to get the ball rolling?
Yeah, funny, this just recently came up in a meeting I was in about fully online students. Can you hear me okay?
We sure can.
Okay. And we said it's a frustration as teachers or mentors that a lot of the reasons a student would leave the brick and mortar and be fully virtual is a reason that they would need a lot of emotional support, and they kind of lose connection with that. They might have mental health issues or lifestyle, major lifestyle changes that would cause them, to leave the brick and mortar, and then they just kind of can become more isolated. And so we really are motivated to address that, but not always sure how, because the students aren't always that forthcoming with our attempts to connect with them.
During your conversation, were there ideas thrown about? I mean, the problem was defined, I guess, and then did the conversation take you to some potential ideas?
We talked about gathering as a staff lists of resources like county mental health and those kind of things, and even maybe connecting them back with the brick and mortar school counselors, because sometimes the students, we shared times the students had come to us, and we wanted to respect the fact that they trusted us, but also be honest with the fact that sometimes those issues are something I can sympathize with, but not something that I'm qualified to speak to. But so often, I see sometimes that students are just kind of told, well, the services you need are at brick and mortar and you should go back there, but there's real reasons why they're not there. So we came up with some ideas, but we were left not completely, I think, satisfied with all of our options, and so just curious as to what other people are doing.
Does anyone want to share what you're doing in your district that you have found has been helpful?
Well, that's what we do.
Marsha, I have a quick question.
Sure.
So because I don't know who is speaking, what direction or what area is she coming from? Is it a homeschool, or just so I understand what the dynamics are?
The specific instance was a former brick and mortar full-time virtual student, but I don't know that it's exclusive to that, but the instance, that we had was.
And this student is now totally virtual?
Right. Well, sort of.
So I guess if I can, from my standpoint, because obviously we have a center, but probably 95 or 90% of our students do not come into the center, but we have access to the CA60s, and we can review some of the mental health reports. And I'm on staff. I'm obviously the social worker on staff. So in those instances, the students come in. Are you aware of what mental health concerns or what their IEPs are, or what services they need, or no?
I guess it's a combination. I mean, sometimes, often, yes. Often, we're made aware of the reason they sought a different pathway. And there's that. And then, just like anybody that works with youth, sometimes you're the first person they confide in. So it could be both.
Mm-hmm. And do you have access to a social worker on staff?
No, that was one of the things that we discussed in the meeting, but we don't this time.
Okay. Well, and I think that's pretty. How do I want to say it? In all of the conferences that I've gone to, that's kind of the norm. And I guess the reason why I'm speaking out and getting involved in more conferences is because I think educators or administrators, superintendents, I think they need to hear, even, and especially with the virtual programs, that they really need to, and my director's here, he's probably going to be like, you're trying to sell them on social workers, but I think it's such an essential piece that, because we do have educators that are not behavior therapists, and we do, that are not used to or versed on trauma and how it affects the pathways of the brain or daily activities, that if you do have a social worker on staff, we reach out virtually. So that's, I guess, why I'm kind of a advocate about creating that.
Thank you. Yes, I would echo your advocacy of that. I think it's a goal we have.
When you say you reach out to the students, and how does that happen? What methods have you found that work best? Not methods.
Well, normally whether it's through the interview or intake process that we have here at the school, there's usually a brief face-to-face contact. But a lot of times, parents and kids don't come in and disclose anything. So teachers are the first kind of responders. So they are made aware, and then they will often come to me and say, this is kind of out of my scope, what should I do? So we really educated our teachers on what are your limitations? What do you feel comfortable with? Where should the boundaries be set? So they reach out to me, then I will reach out, and whether it's text or a lot of our students have Facebook Instant Messenger, we start out with that. We do some, Zoom, we do some Skype, we, just depending on, we have GoGuardian alerts here that, if we were alerted to students, making or doing searches on, easiest way to commit suicide, I will get that alert and I'll reach out to the student. Obviously, some things have to be done face-to-face. We do home visits. But there's a lot of things that can be done virtually. And it sounds crazy, but that's the world that we live in. And there are some therapists that now, just like anything, that they're doing all of their contacts online. Which, that's neither here nor there, but, our opinions are, and whether or not that's effective. But, if that's the only way that you can reach out to a student, then we have to use every means we can, and good things are being done virtually, I believe.
Can I ask how many students or how many virtual students you have to support a position like this?
Well, right now, when I started probably 3.5 years ago, I was asked to do Grand Rapids, Three Rivers, and Battle Creek, and I said no. And I actually did Three Rivers, 170 students, and Battle Creek, I think we had 270 at the time. Probably after 6 months, I backed out of the Three Rivers, and I'm just fully concentrating on Battle Creek now. We're up to about 340, 348. And obviously I don't have virtual therapy sessions with all of them. There's not a need for all of them. But as they come in, I've had to learn probably boundaries on my own, because obviously that as a social worker, you could probably work 24/7 in a virtual world. If you have your Facebook Instant Messenger light on, you can, and I'm working on a project, I can get a response from a student or a contact from a student at 1 o'clock in the morning. So that's been kind of a learning experience for me.
I think that applies to all of us, regardless of what role we fill, teachers, administrators in the virtual world.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Can I add?
Oh, yeah.
This is Bob.
I know.
I'm the director, and Nicole, since she's been here, one thing I just wanted to throw in, because I heard Marcia say, what do you actually do there, that I think, and just for me, observing what we're doing here that's working. When I say working, it's that whole social worker piece, reaching kids, but also it's an ongoing process when you're evaluating kids, and why all of a sudden maybe they're doing very well for 2 or 3 weeks, and then all of a sudden there's a 2-week roadblock, and then all of a sudden progress is done or not completed, or they're not making any strides. So what we've done over here is we have a little, we use the PULSE program, which is basically a student teacher accountability program. And we meet with the teachers and mentor teachers weekly, once a week. Nicole heads that up. And somebody would say, why would a social worker head that up? But we have a teacher involved, an ex-administrator from Greenville, who's basically an academic person, and then Nicole sits in on it. And we go through every single kid weekly in a half-hour, 40-minute meeting with the teacher, and we find the kids that maybe might need some extra push or we recognize that something's not right. And believe it or not, 80%, it's not a big mystery, 80-90% is usually something emotional trauma type of item. By doing that, it allows Nicole, it gives us more people to attack the problem and try to motivate. And, sometimes those students they might tune a teacher out, we've all done that. You might tune somebody out, and it just gives you more people to help out. But we do that now on a weekly thing, and it's really shown a lot of progress in reaching some of our lower end kids that, are doing that. So that was my piece.
Who would you say catches that? Is it the mentor teacher who kind of sees the drop in progress, or the teacher?
Yeah, I would say it's a combination. I mean, the teacher obviously sees, and a lot of times some of the kids will say, okay, well, we had one recently, 17, mom passed away suddenly, and she just stopped working. And she came to us probably 4 months ago when it happened because she stopped working at school altogether. So now she stopped working for us. So the mentor sees it if they have a good relationship, and that's why we really promote relationships. I mean, our teachers aren't teaching. They might be teaching skills on note taking and test taking and good study habits, but they're not teaching the classes per se. So their main job is that relationship piece, building that bond to find out what the barriers are. So once that happens, if they see the productivity decline, they will reach out, and then they will say, okay, this is beyond what I can do, or hey, I think they need to talk to you. This is really affecting, whatever. And then that's when I will step in, and whether it's instant message, a lot of kids use instant messenger, Facebook video, texting back and forth, and it does and again, there comes a time when face-to-face contact obviously needs to be made, and whether it's a home visit or they come in, that's when there is that face-to-face piece.
Bob, as the director, I think you would, listening to you over the years, not just today, I think you see this as a really good investment of your funds. I don't mean to, make it black and white like that, but I think you see this as a great way to support kids.
Well, and I think go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I just wondered if in the beginning, if you thought, wow, we just can't afford it. And now you can say, whoa, we can't afford not to.
Well, it's interesting because, at the beginning, this is so new, and you're experimenting with a lot of things, and obviously budget always plays in. But we felt sitting down, that was Jim Birmingham, myself, even Dallas Bell thought that it was a very good investment for kids. And it was kind of a no-brainer when you kind of, thought about this stuff and looked at the clientele you're dealing with and some of the kids. This has evolved. This isn't everybody's total percentage of their population, but it is a large one. And there's no difference in a brick and mortar. Like the one young lady was saying, they have the same problems with kids in the brick and mortar. They have those resources there. They have counselors. They have social workers. So what would be the difference? I think me and you, Marcia, talked about in the last couple of years, even with Nicole, was the trick is how do you reach all those kids if you have 330 of them? How do you reach them all if they have problems? And I think we're doing a better job in doing that. And I think that's a trick. It was a great investment. It's been very integral. And if you were in our building and seen the teachers and mentors reach out and work as a team and really get together and attack some of those issues, you can see the benefit.
So how are you reaching out to that number of students? I mean, how are you, these meetings that you have, I'm sure, are extremely helpful. It really, not only does it kind of bring it to everyone's attention, but it keeps each person focused on the fact that, tomorrow I need to report which students are maybe not logging in, or, kind of keeps us personally accountable. But what other things have you found make a difference? And we know there's no one way anymore. We don't want one way for it. That's not our world anymore. That's what, especially in the virtual, you can customize. What kinds of, you reach out virtually, you call them, do you contact parents? At what point do you do that when these are high school kids? When do you reach out to them? The parent may be the problem. How do you know, kind of do the next step?
Well, I think, and I'll kind of go back just a little bit. I think, and then I'll touch base on what you were saying. I think what we've found since I've been here is that it is a huge job for one person, because with the students that we have, the at-risk students, a lot of our population, they have a lot of needs. So I think what my job, or part of my job is really being able to provide an education or professional development, or educate our educators on how to deal with, and I think Mike talked about this on his the webinar yesterday, was when you talk about having a trauma-sensitive staff, it makes a huge difference. And I think in the virtual world, like, we have extra time because we're not teaching. So if we do a PD, I can come to them and we can spend 2 hours on talking about anxiety and what it looks like and how to deal with it, and or trauma brains and pathways and how it affects you. Some kids are constantly on high alert, and whether they're texting you, or whether you're having a conversation, or whether you're having a face-to-face parent meeting, what those things are that we're looking for. And a big thing is not taking it personal. As a staff, as educators, the big thing is if they've suffered trauma and they come to you and they're on high alert and you get too close, or you get in their space, or you poke too hard. As a therapist, we always say poking the bear. It's if you are building a positive relationship, even if they're not in front of you, you can still poke the bear. You can still say the wrong thing. And in teaching them that the relationship isn't always about, and I think Mike hit on this, it's negative experiences are, like, how do I want to say this? Our teachers can do more damage without even realizing it. So if we don't give them a trauma-sensitive background or approach to use with these kids, then we could do more damage. So if I can teach them, if I can come to them and teach 9 teachers coming from a trauma-sensitive approach, whether it's a text, whether it's a phone call, whether it's a parent meeting, then, because it's more than I can do myself, one person. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. So when you run these 2-hour sessions, I mean, and that, I'm thinking I was a brick and mortar teacher. Well, I did both, but I was brick and mortar most of the time. I mean, these are things we all needed to hear, but like you're saying, it was more difficult to fit in that kind of a time frame with having to be in a classroom in front of kids most of the day. So I would imagine that your teachers are extremely appreciative of the expertise and knowledge, information you're providing them with. I mean, it just seems real helpful and essential. It seems essential.
Well, and I think having the time to revisit it, because I think with this population, it's easy to say they're not trying, or they're being manipulative. There's another excuse, or there's another illness, or there's in how to bring them back to being mindful of their own stresses that they bring in daily, and in really, and this is, I think I sent you a message on this morning, is, teaching, and this is what kind of Mike said, that, teaching about the happiness and having them when they do come in, or we do have contacts, that we can recreate pathways in the brain that were eliminated or stopped because of trauma. When they come into our center, we can create a new pathway by a positive experience. In the positive experience, maybe their only positive experience they have for the week. Or if we have a phone call and it's a positive phone call, and we talk about how they're doing and what they did or how was their weekend, that may be more important than, did you get your 30% this week? So just making the staff really aware of there are other things that are blocking or creating barriers, to be aware of those, to be sensitive to those issues.
And not to totally switch gears, but I know there's probably a lot of people on the call that have my second question too. I would say that's for our homeschool and part-time population. I know the director and I here talked about this a couple of times recently, that when we talk about building relationships, we have such a large population with such a variety of needs they have from our program. And some of them don't seem to need to make much of a connection, or at least they don't see the value from their end in making much of a connection, and their contacts are just kind of something they get out of the way once a week. What are other schools doing? Like, are you doing the same thing for everyone, or do you have maybe mentors that specialize based on the family's needs, or how do you kind of approach the variety of responses you get from especially the part-time population?
To be totally honest, I think my part-time population see the mentor contacts as a chore. It's just something that we require them to do, and not something that that they necessarily want or need.
I think we also have a population that's true for, and we've played around with things like giving them a mentor that will be like at our center the day that they have their application class, so that they see that person face to face, or keeping them with the same mentor year after year. And I could say, as a mentor, some of mine I have a really great relationship with, and we converse throughout the week, and it's not a Wednesday check-in thing. I talk to them 2, 3, 4 times a week naturally, but even I have a handful that really do see it as a chore, and I'm not even sure how to approach it. If they don't have a need that I need to fill, I don't know what my role should be, how hard I should push it, or if that's what they want it to be, at some point should I respect that? I don't know, because we all are about building relationships, but some people might feel like they have enough relationships, and like I said, they don't see the value in it. And what should I do?
Yep, I agree. I do try to keep the same mentor with the same family year after year so that they can build that relationship. But yeah, I have the same problem.
We've done also kind of having specialty mentors, like if we have people taking partnership classes that are full-time virtual, they'll get a mentor that understands how the full-time virtual platforms work, like Plato and all that. You know, if we have dual enrolled kids, they'll get a mentor that, so their siblings might all have one mentor year after year, but once they enter dual enrollment, they might get a mentor that actually goes out and visits the colleges and stuff. And I'm not sure which way develops better relationships. So I'm really curious about ideas other folks have.
Well, I think for our population, that's the big question is, I would say we have more than a handful, Betsy, that don't like it. I would say the majority of our people aren't that happy with the contact, but that doesn't mean that we can't make the contact better and make them happier about it. Like the call yesterday, I think really inspired a lot of us to think about new ways to do that. But what I like about what Nicole was saying, and it often happens in our co-op group, which is nice, is that just because maybe they have a different reason the kids might need support than we do, it's still a format that we could all use and just tweak it to what the needs are of our population are. I love the idea of a weekly meeting where you're identifying the kids that need support. So like at some districts, they might need support for other reasons, but ours, maybe it's just about trying to make things more meaningful to them and finding a way to maybe make it more fun or something that they would enjoy. But the format, you know, that's the beauty of it. The format can stay the same, and the idea is something we could all use. All we have to do is tweak it to the population that we have. In our homeschool population, I think we have to approach them a little bit differently, but the format would be perfect.
I think one of our mentors has brought up a good point, that the weekly contact is pretty arbitrary, and you kind of desensitize people to the help that's available to them by having it in that format. We're kind of stuck with it, so I don't know how we mitigate it. I would say I help 90% of my mentees several times a year, but they don't all need contact with me on a weekly basis as a part-time student. So I guess maybe I'm reformatting my question is, how do I maintain the relationship in spite of my required weekly contact?
Well, I think that's one reason why Marcia started out saying we weren't talking about the weekly contact, because we've kind of all resolved ourselves to that's what we call a hoop. And our population has been really good over the years understanding the hoops and doing it. But I think this is a whole nother conversation about another type of contact. What's great about once we get that hoop over with, then there's no regulations on the contact that we can make. And I think when we were on that VLOC conference, they had a lot of great ideas on how they talk to the kids, and they had kids that were texting them from their activities, and they seem to really be down the road in how you can build the relationships and make it more fun. I think that's kind of what inspired me to want to have this conversation, just because I think we're better than we were, but we're certainly not where we want to be. This is kind of a work in progress to figure this whole mentoring thing out.
Right, and I don't want to make the call about how to get my weekly contact, but that is a factor in my relationship building, is because they hear from me so often. You know, it's kind of like your kids tune you out when you overtalk something.
I have a quick question. I know you mentioned, and we kind of ran into this, about I heard you say that we try to keep them from year to year with the families. And I think we've learned that flexibility with assigning mentors is good. And I think we have asked teachers that if you feel that you're not bonding with the family or the student, that is okay. There may be someone else that would be better to fit that child's needs. So it's not like we're quick to change or the kids are hot. And one of the things that was a concern is, are these families going to start demanding different mentors, or are mentors not wanting to have the difficult families. And we have not run into that whatsoever. It's very rare that we have to switch, but I think flexibility on our part to make a good fit is more important.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that, and I think it's just creating the attitude that it doesn't mean you're a bad mentor because you don't click with a kid. We could move them to somebody else and maybe they just click, but it doesn't have anything to do with saying anything about your ability to be a good mentor, and we need to be open to that.
Well, and I think with that, we've actually seen really positive results, because if then we switch, we don't waste time with trying to make it work, and we switch, and then all of a sudden they click for whatever reason, whether it's a male-female switch or, for whatever reason, they have a different, they have things in common. We see that the children start working faster. We start, some of the kids that we haven't been able to get motivated, they're motivated based on just a mentor switch.
Marcia, when you and I talked, you had some really, I thought, really interesting things to say about your personal experience, not only being an online teacher and building relationships that way, but some of the inspiration you had from online teachers that taught you, I think, when you were getting your master's degree or something. I think that would be worthy to share here.
Sure. I got my master's degree almost 19 years ago. It was totally online, and I had great instructors through Capella University, and it was, I loved it because actually it was competency-based, which we didn't know at the time, but I could move at my own pace. And when I was done and I finished the project, and the project was tied directly to my classroom, then it was all just a real positive experience. But the one person who stood out that Cindy's referring to is an instructor I had who every week she would send us up just an email to the whole group about her life. And she would share, and it happened at that time, she was making a major life shift and moving from this great place that she loved to somewhere else. Now, why? I'm not really sure. She didn't get into that kind of thing. And it was always very positive, but it was just, her sharing about herself. And I mean, you connected to this lady. You just connected to her because she was reaching out to us and had nothing to do with the course. And, as a result, we were responding to her, at least I was. It was just very different than any of the other instructors I had. In fact, most of the others were kind of, we say they don't need us. We all need to relate to the people we're working with. We all need to relate to our teachers. So I don't think that's true, that they don't need us. I may think you don't, but, we just need to find a way to do that better. And that's what you guys are talking about. So that's one thing. I guess listening to everyone right now, one topic I would like to do one of these calls on two-way. I would like to make that the specific, because I think we should take some of these ideas and concerns to legislators and MDE, because what I'm hearing you guys say is that these requirements can become a barrier. And, it's turning them off so much that you can't have the meaningful interaction with them. Back in the early days of this mentor requirement, it could be about anything. In fact, a lot of us who were teachers would reach out, and for me, it was like remembering the professor that I had and reaching out to them as human beings, not as my math student. And I just think we need to approach people who are the decision makers in all of this and tell them why what they're requiring is actually, has unintended negative consequences. So I would like to, I mean, I'm just kind of throwing this out. Maybe we could do one of those conversations, because this has been very enlightening to me to hear that it's actually a barrier.
I agree. When you limit the conversation to progress and content of the class, we miss the whole social side.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not.
Right.
I'm not sure who made the point about. It might have been Cindy, but I'm not sure about how we make the weekly contact to jump through the hoop for the state, but it's beyond that. The additional contacts and the additional calls or texts or little notes that actually then develops the relationship and does the human kindness or positive connection piece. So I'm going to bring up Success for a minute, because they have found with their research that, and people are probably not going to like this, but the more the contact, the better the relationship. And the better the relationship, the more productivity from the student. And I think, it's funny that I say that, and I'm like, oh, because I know even a lot of our mentors, they're like, okay, what do you guys require? And we require 2 contacts a week. The state requires 1 contact a week. But I think Success, if you talk to someone from Success, they will say the teachers in the schools that are contacting 4 or 5 times a week, but those are positive contacts. Those aren't harassing, or those aren't bugging, or does that make sense?
Yeah, I would say that it depends. The frequency is what the type is too, because the week relationship. But if I say, how are you with your illness, your parents' illness?
Betsy, you're cutting in and out a little bit. I'm not sure. We're hearing
because
Jesse
I'm in Bedford now.
Okay.
I said the type definitely matters, along with the frequency. I could tell them 4 times a week you're failing all your classes, and that would count for my 2-way, but it's hurting my relationship with that student. I could ask them how their sick parent is doing, and that's going to help my relationship, but I can't count it as a mentor 2-way. So, you can see how it does affect the relationship.
I think what you're hearing, though, Betsy, is it's got to be more than 1 contact a week. That's what I really agree with that wholeheartedly. This relationship building is going to happen in an additional contact, not in a 2-way. So people are going to have to reach out. And then those additional contacts, the beauty of it is you can talk about anything you want. There's no regulations around the additional contacts.
That's exactly what I was going to add to, Cindy, is that it doesn't even need to be 2-way. I mean, it can be a 1-way thing. And if teachers reach out, like my instructor did for me, multiple times, hers is only once a week, but regardless, I mean, if you just reach out and tell them about yourself and your day, and, I do that in my own brick and mortar classroom all the time. I would share my life with them. I mean, nothing, too intense, but we're people. Let them see us as people. And it made all the difference in the world. So, this 2-way is also, that can be an issue. I understand they want to make sure that, it's back and forth. But maybe we can come up with ideas, like I said, that we could take to the department and tell them why, and to legislators, because they can, create that freedom for you guys to do what does make a difference instead of what doesn't.
Marcia, after I talked to you and you told me, about your experience both as a student and as a teacher, without telling Bobby Jo about our conversation, I threw the same question out to her, and she gave me almost the same answer you did about a professor that really inspired her, because they asked her and they told them stuff about their life and asked her direct questions that were relevant to her as a person, not just to a group.
Yep.
So how do you connect with that relationship with our part-time families that really just don't want to do it at all. I think that's our biggest.
Betsy,
No,
have you
I don't think we do this. What we're talking about now, I don't think we do it. I think we have to start doing it. We don't do that.
How?
Yeah. Through additional contact, not just through the two-way. Doing additional contact and doing it as a relationship. But, hey, Betsy.
Coming in, we're having a better.
Betsy just walked in the door. That's nice.
I've been seeing the parking lot, but I touched it now. Right, but we have people now that'll go 3, 4, 5 weeks without replying to a once-a-week contact.
But see, I'm thinking that's why, because we have no relationship with them. That's why they don't reply. It's just they're sick of it, and we've not done anything to make them not sick of it, and that's what we got to figure out.
So,
I think we're
do you
we have a population of people that just don't want it. I mean, they just want, they're dual enrollment and to be left alone.
So do you do home visits or anything like that?
Can you say that again? You cut out a little bit.
I'm wondering if you...
Not for homeschoolers. No. That would not be a positive thing.
I'm sorry, I missed what she said.
I don't think the homeschool population would be open to that.
Okay.
As a general rule.
Okay.
Maybe one thing we can do is, because, we are kind of crossing back and forth between the two-way and relationships, but I do think you can't really, in some ways, you can't talk about one without the other, especially if it's a barrier. But maybe we can, I'm kind of thinking, and Cindy and I can talk this over, about some kind of topic-driven conversations. Everybody come with a list of things that worked and things that didn't work. But in other words, we need to think everything we do, we need to customize. And maybe we give a list to kids and families, and they get to pick the way. And maybe then they would be more invested in what they choose. Because if they don't do it and you don't get funded, they can't be in the program. So, at some point, they have to understand that there are consequences, whether they like it or not. They have to find some way to, right now, meet the state requirements. So maybe we could do that. And then, listening to Nicole, this is an essential piece. I hope you all consider what she shared and the role that she and Bob talked about that she has and the value that's brought to the program. And these are things we can talk with as a group in our conferences, but also, we're going to do some superintendent conversations, and we can make sure that, we're emphasizing it there as well. In fact, I'm going to, try to encourage them to be on these calls, because I don't think there are any right this minute. There might be, but I didn't sense that right away. But, so Nicole's kind of talking about once they're identified as having, you're keeping in touch with them. I don't mean to say you're not, but, when there's a problem is identified, you're working with that. But the other thing, Nicole, that I heard you say, kind of in your email to me earlier today, is that when you listened to my teams yesterday, it was, I think we were all thinking about more proactive ways. Like before there's a problem, how can we build those relationships? And he wasn't exactly talking about how he was building relationships, but he was talking about, things that we can help kids with that make them just more centered and, able to kind of exist, whether it's in the academic or in their personal or whatever. So, that's another topic, I think, is what can we do proactively? One idea that I'll get into more is advisories. Those of you who have known me in this virtual environment know that I've been pushing for that, not as an only way, but as one way to get kids engaged and involved and feel part of your program, because that's what they did over at EdVisions. And I got online, this is probably 10, 12 years ago, I got online with them as they did one of their advisories. And these kids were interacting with each other as though they were in the same room. And all they had was chat at that point. They didn't have other means of, kind of having more visual contact. And it was just powerful. It was powerful. And they were all doing, this is a project-based learning. They were doing their projects and sharing what they were doing. And, and the cute thing for me was that on the sideline, you had a couple kids like chatting back and forth to each other about unrelated topics. And then the teacher stepped in and said, get back on task. And I thought this was just exactly like being in a classroom. It was very real to these kids. They were required to attend an advisory every week. So these are the kinds of things we can be looking at. What can we do to make them feel a part of a part of your school, a part of your partnership, a part of whatever it is that you're doing? How can we make them feel invested in it and empowered by who they are and what they can do in your program?
I was thinking about that. I loved that call that Mike Haynes did yesterday. It was very inspirational. And I think one of the kind of just simple takeaways was just letting kids know that we care about their happiness and their purpose. Just letting them know that that's on our radar screen is very powerful, because I'll bet you if you ask a lot of these kids that have mentors, if they think their mentor cares about that, their answer might be no. I think we just need to let them know that that's on our radar screen, and we care about that part of their life, as well as if they're going to log on and, do what they need to do.
Well, and I think, Cindy, we've had this discussion before, that I think as an adult and as mentors and teachers, we also have to find out or figure out or think about what we're comfortable with individually. And if we, and I think that's my piece that I've been here, is educating people that what is a good mentor, what is a good teacher, and what it requires. And it requires some vulnerability on our part to become, like you said, not completely open and talk about our personal lives, but we have to be human to them. They have to know what makes us tick a little bit, or a little bit about our families and what we're bringing to. Because if we don't, all we are is a two-way contact. We are what are you doing? What are you working on? Why aren't you working? And who wants that? I mean, I wouldn't want that for my children. And I don't want that for my mentors and teachers here. So that's why I think, and we may need to educate them, what is a good mentor? What does it look like?
One idea that Monica and I, we haven't made any decision on this, but just in our sitting around talking to each other, that we thought about maybe letting the kids pick their own mentors and doing something like you would with classes. Like, say a person had 30 mentees, we'd open up 30 seats for that mentor, and kids could go on and start picking their own mentor. And then Monica thought about the idea too of having like a mentor scavenger hunt. So we'd have bios of the mentors out there, and then we'd do some kind of a fun thing where, like I like to use Monica as an example. If Monica was a mentor, I know that she was a barrel racer. So you would have to read her bio to ever believe that would be Monica, that would you draw that line from barrel racing to Monica, because nobody would believe that. But little things about people that maybe somebody else wouldn't know, and then the kids could, we could divide something where they go around and say, which mentor, loves to cook or something. And that might be just in the beginning of the year, maybe just to get them to know their mentors. So, like I said, we don't have it perfected, but just coming up with ideas like what you're saying to make ourselves more human to these kids.
I think those are great ideas.
Yep. I agree. And in fact, I think this is where a good place to kind of wrap this up, and Cindy, you and I can get together and maybe look at some of these other topics. But kind of what I'm hearing you say on this one is, how can we make ourselves more human, as part of the relationship building? And I think that idea is awesome. I want to hear more about Monica. This is great. I want to do this again. This is wonderful. So Cindy and I will get together. We'll talk and see. I think, honestly, we didn't take a roll call on purpose. Those of you who are online, I can see that. Those of you who are just on the phone, I can't see that. And that's absolutely fine. But, I think it would be nice if I could reach out, Cindy and I could reach out to those of you who've been on this call. So if you could email, and you can just send it to me, miles@edtechspecialist.com, and just any feedback, or just say I was on the call. That's all you have to do. And then we can get a few questions out to you guys to see how often you want to do this, and then get some topic ideas from you. And, you know, we can even say, were you okay with us recording this or not? You know, I think if you could be okay, I think that would be best, honestly, just because I think of all the people who weren't able to be with us who will really benefit from this, including your district leaders. I think it's really important that they hear these conversations. So if you could email me, miles@edtechspecialist.com, that would be awesome. And then we'll get something out to you. I just thank you so much. This has been fantastic.
I think it was a great start. It was a great start to this conversation. It was a good call today. I'm excited to see what we can do next.
Sounds good. Thank you. Thanks, Lisa, for recording.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.